The glass slipped from my hand, shattering against the tile, and for a moment the room froze. Everyone's eyes were on me, but not in concern. Something colder lingered, sharper. My sister laughed. Just a small, deliberate laugh, like a signal no one else understood. My father didn't move. He didn't look at the mess or me, and the air smelled of denial, like everyone had rehearsed this moment, and I was the only one who hadn't memorized my lines. I felt the weight of their quiet judgment before I even understood it. Something was wrong, something deliberate. I had always trusted them. I had always been careful. But tonight, someone had stepped out of the shadows. I wake before the house, before the noise, before the sunlight even touches the blinds. The kitchen smells faintly of yesterday's coffee, and I move through it slowly, deliberately, as if speed would betray my presence. My sister's laughter from the night before is still an echo in the corners, but I push it down. I have a routine, a rhythm, quiet, unremarkable, safe. Dad's study door is closed. I know it's closed, not because he told me, but because the scent of old leather, paper, and cigars lingers faintly under it. I leave it alone. I never need to ask permission. I have learned early that silence is often safer than curiosity. Mom's room is orderly, too, sheets tucked perfectly, the subtle trace of her perfume lingering in the air. A note lies on the dresser. Out for errands, back soon. Don't wait up. Simple, harmless, expected. Trust has built itself into these small gestures. Breakfast is solitary. Toast, eggs, coffee, nothing fancy, nothing that demands conversation. I watch my sister across the table. She's animated, even in this quiet morning, recounting the minor dramas of her friends' lives, her voice higher than usual. I respond only when spoken to, my words few, measured. My presence is always calm, a foil to her storm. I notice the way Dad listens without seeing, nodding absently, always one step removed. I have learned that attention is uneven, and yet I trust it. Not because it's perfect, but because it is predictable. I move through the house like a shadow. Folding laundry, straightening books, checking the calendar for reminders. My sister complains about the order I maintain, calls it obsessive, but I do not argue. Trust here is in the quiet acceptance of roles, mine, hers, theirs. I am the observer, the silent caretaker of their expectations, their routines. I have perfected restraint. There is power in not needing to assert myself, power in being invisible. Mom returns mid-morning. She greets me with a quick smile, the kind that doesn't linger. A brush of hand on my shoulder. My sister bounces in behind her, eyes wide, voice loud. I watch the interaction carefully, noting how Mom deflects, how she smiles politely, how she nods to me as if to say, "You're safe here, nothing untoward." And in these moments, I feel the fragile reassurance of my world. Small truths, small gestures holding me steady. By noon, I am in the library, quietly going through my own work. Papers, notes, scattered pens. I know the house too well, each room carrying its own unspoken rules. The office door creaks. Dad's silhouette appears for a moment in the doorway, checking, always checking. Our eyes meet. No words. He trusts me in his way. He allows me the space to act as I always have, careful, quiet, precise. I nod slightly, a silent acknowledgement. That nod, that recognition is enough. I am seen minimally, but reliably. Lunch is taken with the television off, the house still as a held breath. I notice the little things. The way silverware lines up on the counter, the way sunlight grazes the edge of the table, the subtle shift in my sister's expression when she thinks no one watches. I catalog these moments silently. They matter, even when they do not appear to. Observation is a form of control. It is trust extended cautiously, almost as a test. Afternoon drifts into evening. I walk the house again, checking windows, straightening minor disarray, responding to nothing, anticipating nothing. Mom is in her room. Dad is in the study. My sister sprawls on the couch, scrolling, laughing at something small, trivial. I sit near the kitchen counter, quiet. The house feels like a fragile ecosystem, balanced on minor gestures, small trust, the silent understanding that no one will cross certain lines. Or so I tell myself. Dinner comes and goes. Conversation is light, superficial. I observe. I respond only to the direct, factual. Trust is not assumed. It is practiced, reinforced with each small interaction. And as night falls, I retreat to my room. The soft hum of the fan, the steady pulse of silence. My sister's door creaks occasionally. Mom and Dad move softly, predictably. I feel safe. I feel steady. I feel invisible, but in the way that reassures me. Tonight, as I lie in bed, the edges of the day settle around me. I trust the rhythm of this house. I trust their routines, their gestures, their patterns. I trust because I have learned to observe, to wait, to measure. Trust is not blind. It is quiet. And in this quiet, I feel a fragile confidence that tomorrow, like today, will be predictable, safe, uneventful. I do not yet know that the shadow of that illusion is longer than I imagine. The morning begins like any other, but something has shifted. It is subtle at first, a glance that lingers too long, a tone that is just slightly off, but my instincts notice. I pause at the doorway to the kitchen, watching my sister sip her coffee, her movements precise, too careful. She notices me and smiles, a practiced, casual smile, but it falters just a fraction when our eyes meet. I shake off the feeling. I tell myself I am imagining things. I have learned to do this, doubt before alarm. Breakfast is quiet, though my sister hums under her breath, a tune I don't recognize. It sticks in my mind longer than it should. Dad is distant as usual, and I catch him adjusting something on his desk that doesn't need adjusting, his eyes darting toward me and then away. I consider it. I dismiss it. Morning routines often hold small peculiarities, that's the way of life here. But the unease is persistent, like a low hum just beyond hearing. Mid-morning, I notice my sister's bag on the couch. Her laptop is missing. That is not unusual. She leaves it elsewhere sometimes. But today, I feel the slight tension of anticipation. When she enters, she claims to have left it in her room. Her explanation is smooth, too smooth. I make no comment. I catalog the details silently, noting the quick shift in her posture as she spoke. I feel a flicker of suspicion, small and fleeting, and yet I push it aside. The day unfolds, yet little moments keep pricking at me. The mail comes. A letter addressed to my father is missing its envelope. My eyes catch the corner peeking from under a cushion. When I mention it, Dad barely glances, saying, "Probably nothing, don't worry about it." I nod. I believe him, but the unease grows. There is a subtle message in these minor omissions, though I cannot yet articulate it. I continue my day, brushing the feeling aside as nothing. Lunch is again quiet, but I notice the subtle pattern emerging. My sister laughs at jokes Dad hasn't made yet, or at remarks no one else hears. I watch her lips move, her fingers tapping nervously against the glass, the faint crease between her eyebrows when she thinks no one notices. I do notice. I do not comment. Trust is still the default, but caution has begun to creep into the edges of my routine. In the afternoon, I find small inconsistencies in the house. A book moved, a drawer slightly ajar, a faint scent that doesn't belong. I catalog each detail, noting patterns without calling attention to them. These moments feel deliberate, like signals or tests, though I cannot yet know what. I feel the stirrings of doubt. I feel the quiet tension building. And yet I continue as if everything is normal because the alternative, acknowledging suspicion, feels dangerous. Later, I hear muted voices from the hallway. My sister and my father. The words are indistinct, clipped, measured. I pause, heart tightening slightly. I do not intervene. I do not listen too closely. My instinct is to observe without interference. But the pattern is forming, small, deliberate actions creating ripples of discomfort. I notice, I watch, I take no action. Restraint feels safer than confrontation. Evening comes. I prepare dinner as usual, silently noting the way my sister hovers near the kitchen counter, her movements tentative, almost performative. She drops something, a glass, small, inconsequential, and laughs at herself, a sharp, forced laugh. The sound lingers. I notice how my father doesn't comment. I notice how he doesn't look at me. Something is shifting. I cannot yet name it, cannot yet confront it, but my trust begins to fracture in the smallest increments. Before bed, I walk through the house, quietly checking each room. Everything appears unchanged, orderly, familiar. Yet I feel the tremor beneath the surface. I pause outside my sister's door. She is talking on the phone, whispering, laughing too softly to catch the words. I step back, quietly retreating to my room. I am careful. Observation is my shield. I catalog the patterns, the oddities, the subtle inconsistencies, but I do not act. Not yet. Lying in bed, I replay the day in fragments, strange glances, small mistakes, unnoticed movements. A quiet tension coils in my chest. I have not been betrayed, not yet, but the world I trust has begun to feel slightly off kilter, and I am forced to acknowledge it. I am unsettled, but I am restrained. My silence is deliberate. My patience is measured. Trust remains, but it is tinged now with awareness, with the first faint echo of doubt that something is wrong. The day ends without incident. Or perhaps the incident is invisible, buried in subtle shifts that no one else recognizes. I do not speak of it. I do not act. I wait. Observation has taught me that the smallest moments carry the heaviest truths. And tonight, the house seems quiet, but the tension has settled in the corners. I can feel it just beneath the surface, and I know, though I cannot yet see, the first cracks have begun to form. The next morning, the air feels heavier, though nothing has changed outwardly. Breakfast begins quietly, as usual, but I notice my sister lingering at the table longer than necessary. Her laughter is sharper, her voice lighter, almost rehearsed. She glances at me, then quickly away, as though she expects me to notice, or perhaps hopes I will not. I do. I do notice. And I do not speak. Restraint is still my first instinct. Dad is distracted, pretending to read the newspaper, though I catch the subtle way his eyes scan the room, lingering too long on my sister, then darting to the walls, then to me. There is a tension in his posture, a stiffness I have not seen before. It makes me pause mid-toast, a flicker of unease running through me. I catalog it silently, noting how the weight of observation has shifted. The house feels slightly smaller, tighter, charged with unspoken intent. I discover the first clear inconsistency mid-morning. My sister's laptop, which she swore she had left in her room yesterday, is now back on the counter, open, though the screen shows a document I have never seen her work on. I ask no questions, but the detail lodges in my mind. My instincts flare, sharp and focused. Something is being hidden, something deliberate. The thought is uncomfortable, but I do not act. I wait, observe, and record silently. By noon, the tension becomes undeniable. A minor argument flares between my sister and Dad over something trivial: milk in the fridge, a misplaced plate. But the anger feels rehearsed, controlled. I see the subtle exchanges, a glare, a quick smirk, the micro gestures that betray intention. I do not intervene. I do not speak. I merely note the disparity between words and actions. The quiet control I have always exercised now feels like a shield. Lunch is a study in small betrayals. My sister knocks over her glass deliberately, laughing when she does, as if testing the air. Dad barely reacts, and I sit, silent, watching the minute performances. I realize now that the cracks I sensed yesterday are widening. I feel the pulse of deception, faint, almost imperceptible, but real. It presses against my chest, yet I do not give in. My restraint has become deliberate armor, my silence a measure of control. In the afternoon, I uncover small but undeniable signs. Notes misfiled in Dad's study. Emails left open on his laptop, glanced at too quickly, then closed. I notice a text flash on my sister's phone before she yanks it away. Each fragment is minor, yet accumulates, forming a pattern too deliberate to ignore. My pulse tightens. My chest clenches. I know now that the world I trusted has begun to lie to me, actively, purposefully. Evening brings another shift. I walk through the hall, noticing the faint scuff on the floor near the stairs, new, deliberate, inconsistent with our routine. My sister watches me, faint tension in her shoulders, expecting that I will comment or confront. I do not. Observation, I remind myself, is power. Even when subtle, even when invisible. Later, I hear voices in the study. Dad and my sister, speaking in quiet tones, punctuated by the occasional sharp laugh. I step closer, not to eavesdrop, but to let my presence linger near the door. I notice the micro shifts, the hesitation before answers, the soft modulation of tones, the way words trail off. Something is being hidden. I catalog it silently, forcing my mind to stay calm, to measure, to wait. At night, lying in bed, I replay each moment of the day. Glances, gestures, misplaced objects, unexplained digital traces. Each one a red flag, each one a silent accusation. The calm rhythm of my home has been disrupted, replaced with a quiet tension that coils beneath every movement, every glance. I feel the first true pulse of betrayal, not yet confronted, not yet named, but undeniable. I do not speak. I do not act. I do not allow alarm to dictate my choices. Restraint has become my method. Observation, my language. Trust is no longer blind. It is cautious. Each detail is recorded, stored, and measured against what I know. I understand now that the comfort I once felt within these walls is fragile, provisional. And yet I lie still, letting the quiet weight settle, preparing for what is coming, even though I cannot yet see its full shape. The first red flags have emerged. They wave silently, unnoticed by anyone but me. And I know deep in the quiet of my chest that the illusions of yesterday have begun to fracture. The house feels smaller, the air sharper. My restraint is tested, my patience measured. And in the darkness of my room, I wait silently for the next moment when the truth begins to bleed into sight. The morning begins with the familiar quiet, but I already feel it, the weight pressing from all sides, subtle and deliberate. My sister is at the table before me, smiling too brightly, eyes flicking toward mine more often than necessary. Yesterday's red flags have solidified into a tension I cannot ignore, but I still do not speak. Observation has become my language, restraint my shield. Dad arrives, coffee in hand, his posture taut, but he greets me as usual. "Morning," he says, casual, neutral, almost dismissive. I nod. My words feel heavy in my mouth, weighed down by the fragments I am already cataloging. My sister chimes in with her usual high-pitched chatter, but there is an edge now, a subtle forcefulness behind each word. I notice the slight pause Dad takes before answering her, the way his smile feels rehearsed, constrained. I catalog the tension. Mid-morning, my first real confrontation of unease arises. I find a note tucked in a book I had left on my desk, handwritten in my sister's familiar script. I pick it up, thinking it might be innocent, a reminder, a joke. But the message is cryptic, pointed, almost accusatory. I question her casually, but she laughs, deflects. "I don't know what you're talking about." Dad, entering the room just then, glances at me and shakes his head, muttering, "Stop overthinking, you're imagining things again." It is the first overt dismissal. I feel it like a physical weight pressing against my chest. I do not argue. I do not raise my voice. Instead, I store the moment in careful silence. My sister smirks, sensing the subtle victory. Dad, blind to her intent or unwilling to intervene, returns to his papers. My restraint deepens. Speaking out feels dangerous. Silence, however, feels like a small assertion of control. By lunchtime, the patterns have become more deliberate. My sister spills a small amount of juice onto the counter. When I comment, she looks genuinely surprised, as if I am overreacting, and Dad murmurs something dismissive, a quick, "It's nothing." The world I trusted, the routines I relied on, now seem to twist beneath my fingers. I feel the first real sting of gaslighting, when reality is questioned, not through confrontation but through subtle erasure. The afternoon brings more evidence, though no one acknowledges it. A missing pen, a misplaced notebook, Dad's emails left open and then swiftly minimized as I approach. Each small incident carries weight, but each is met with denial, a shrug, a laugh, or a glance that refuses engagement. My sister's behavior grows bolder. A whispered comment to Dad, a glance that lingers too long toward me, the way she tilts her head when I speak. She is testing, probing, confident that I will be dismissed. I find myself walking through the house more often, cataloging the evidence in silence. The smallest gestures, the misalignment of picture frames, the faint scent of perfume that is Mom's, the subtle changes in Dad's posture, coalesce into a quiet awareness. I am no longer trusted. Worse, I am doubted. My observations are questioned before I can speak them. I begin to understand the psychological strategy: disorient, dismiss, and control. Evening comes with its own subtle theater. Dinner is quiet, each bite measured. My sister narrates stories with a practiced liveliness, inserting little lies as if to see whether I will challenge them. I do not. Dad corrects her once lightly, almost too gently, and then lets the statements slide. The implication is clear. My judgment is suspect. My restraint grows heavy, but I maintain it. The house is no longer a place of trust. It is a stage where I am quietly marginalized. Later, I retreat to my room. I replay the day in fragments: the cryptic note, the dismissive words, the small manipulations, the invisible victories of my sister. Each moment presses against me, demanding acknowledgement I cannot yet voice. And still, I do not confront, I do not shout. My restraint has become an internal fortress. The subtle manipulations, the gaslighting, the dismissal, are felt keenly but silently endured. As night falls, I lie in bed, cataloging details like a ledger. I note how my voice was minimized today, how my observations were questioned, how reality was quietly rewritten around me. I feel the first taste of isolation in the midst of family, a heavy, slow burn ache. Trust has eroded almost entirely. Observation has become my only refuge. Restraint has become my only power. Tonight, I understand something important. The betrayal is not yet visible to anyone else. It is subtle, silent, psychological, and deliberate. My sister is testing boundaries, Dad is passive, and I am the quiet witness. The dissonance is real. I feel the first sharpness of true injustice, a sense that my presence is questioned, my perception denied, my reality quietly undermined. And yet I wait, I record, I measure, I endure. The morning begins with an unusual stillness. The house feels hollow, as though it is holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I move carefully, noting the faint hum of tension that runs under every surface. My sister's laughter is missing from the kitchen. Dad is quiet, reading the paper with a subtle stiffness in his posture I have never seen before. I feel the weight of observation pressing on me like a tide that I cannot resist. Something is breaking into view. I find the first tangible evidence mid-morning. While organizing books in the study, I notice a folder out of place. Its edges are worn, papers sticking out haphazardly. I pull it free, my fingers trembling slightly, though I try to remain calm. Inside, documents that were never meant for my eyes lay scattered. Receipts, messages, schedules that do not match the stories my sister and father have told. My pulse quickens, but I do not call anyone. Observation is still my weapon. By lunchtime, fragments begin to coalesce into a quiet mosaic of truth. I overhear snippets of a phone conversation my sister thinks I am not listening to. The words are clipped, deliberate, rehearsed, meant to hide and mislead, but their meaning is unmistakable. She is coordinating something hidden. I do not react. I step back, letting my presence remain invisible. But inside, the pieces are aligning, forming a pattern of betrayal that I can no longer ignore. I document everything silently. Receipts hidden under magazines, notes tucked in drawers, emails left open and minimized too quickly. Each fragment points to deliberate concealment. The evidence is scattered, fragmentary, like breadcrumbs left behind in haste. And yet, the larger picture is forming in my mind, a network of deception I had sensed but could not name. My sister is no longer simply mischievous or careless. She is purposeful. And Dad, whether complicit or merely inattentive, has allowed it. Afternoon brings subtle witnesses. The housekeeper mentions a delivery she did not recognize. A neighbor calls about a package left unattended. These fragments, small and almost inconsequential, fit perfectly into the pattern I am reconstructing. My eyes narrow as I catalog each detail. Silence has become both shield and weapon. Each revelation is noted, stored, and measured. I do not confront, not yet. I wait for the pattern to solidify. By early evening, the tension is almost tangible. My sister moves through the house with a confidence she did not have before, as though the veil is thinning but no one has yet noticed. I watch her, carefully noting every interaction. The subtle manipulation, the staged mistakes, the quiet coercion, they are all visible now, even if she believes they are hidden. She is no longer testing boundaries. She is operating within them, confident that denial and dismissal will protect her. Dad remains strangely passive, a silent actor in this unfolding scene. I notice the faint hesitation in his responses when questioned, the micro-expressions he tries to suppress, the way he leaves rooms abruptly when my gaze lingers too long. He is either complicit or powerless, or perhaps both. I do not yet know which. What I do know is that the patterns I have cataloged, the small lies, the omissions, the deliberate manipulations, cannot be ignored. They form a quiet but undeniable narrative. Dinner is subdued, the air taut. My sister speaks carefully, trying to maintain her performance, but small slips reveal her control is imperfect. A glance, a hesitation, a misalignment of words and intention. I notice them all, storing each in my silent ledger. The power in observation is sharpened now. I am no longer merely a passive witness. The evidence is coalescing, and I can see the edges of the truth clearly, even if no one else does. Later, in the quiet of my room, I begin piecing the fragments together, organizing them like a system. Receipts, messages, hidden schedules, they reveal intention, coordination, and a deliberate undermining of my trust. I trace the connections carefully, aware of every detail, every nuance, every subtle betrayal. The psychological weight of this knowledge presses on me, but I endure. Restraint remains my chosen response. Before sleep, I review the day, noting how each fragment, each seemingly minor incident, now feels heavy with significance. The veil of normalcy has lifted slightly. I am beginning to understand the scale of what is happening. My sister is orchestrating, Dad is complicit or blind, and I am the observer, silently collecting evidence, quietly preparing for the moment when the truth becomes undeniable. The first real exposure has arrived, but it is partial, incomplete, like a shadow stretched across the walls. I cannot yet confront it, cannot yet speak. I can only watch, record, and measure. And in the silent corners of the house, I feel a quiet satisfaction. The lie is visible, even if they believe it remains hidden. The game is no longer invisible. The quiet, devastating truth is beginning to emerge. The morning light filters through the blinds, sharp and precise, slicing across the floor as if marking boundaries. I move carefully, cataloging the shifts I notice immediately. My sister's room is unusually quiet. Her laptop sits closed on the desk, her phone absent. Dad is in the study, his posture taut, a stiffness in his shoulders that I have not seen before. Something has shifted. The game of observation has turned into a confrontation of presence, even if unspoken. By mid-morning, the escalation becomes unavoidable. My sister drops a small object, a pen, a notebook near my workspace. The movement is deliberate, not careless. She glances at me, smirking faintly, testing whether I will react. I do not. Silence has become my shield, observation my weapon. But beneath that restraint, my pulse quickens, aware of the stakes that have risen. The subtle war in the house is no longer background noise. It is pressing, insistent, unavoidable. Dad enters shortly afterward. I notice the slight tightness in his jaw, the way his eyes scan the room before settling on me, then quickly away. My sister greets him with a practiced smile, a calculated blend of innocence and authority. He answers, calm but clipped, and I notice how his words carry weight that were absent before. He is stepping into the play knowingly, responding not to the world as it should be, but as my sister has arranged it. The tension tightens. Midday brings a more visible fracture. A message flashes on my sister's phone, accidentally visible over the edge of the counter. I catch it, just enough to see names, times, and plans that do not align with what has been told. She notices me noticing and freezes for a fraction of a second before masking it. Dad watches from across the room, silent, and I realize that complicity runs quietly through him, a passive force that fuels the escalation. My restraint remains my choice, but it grows heavier with each passing moment. Lunch is strained. My sister orchestrates conversation with care, inserting subtle half-truths, testing reactions, probing for weaknesses. Dad participates minimally, allowing her statements to slide, correcting only when absolutely necessary, but with a softness that exposes his reluctance. I listen, quietly, noting every misstep, every forced laugh, every hesitation. The psychological stakes are high. The house no longer feels like a home but a carefully managed theater, and I am the silent witness to the first overt acts of control. Afternoon reveals more deliberate manipulation. Documents I had thought safe, papers I had cataloged meticulously, are subtly displaced. Receipts I had noted are gone, emails altered, messages erased. My sister moves through the house like a conductor, precise and deliberate. Each action carries intent. Each gesture tests boundaries, measuring my restraint. I do not speak. I do not act. Observation now has the weight of strategy, the knowledge that the truth, once fully visible, will speak louder than any confrontation. By evening, the stakes have escalated further. My sister drops another subtle hint of duplicity, a misplaced object meant to provoke, a glancing remark meant to unsettle. Dad responds lightly, almost imperceptibly, but the subtext is clear. He tolerates it, allows it, perhaps even reinforces it silently. I see the power dynamic crystallizing. the quiet dominance of those who manipulate, the fragile restraint of those who witness. Dinner is subdued but charged. My sister orchestrates her every word, every movement with precision. Dad's responses are measured, almost distant. I note every micro-expression, every slight misalignment between gesture and tone, storing them in my mental ledger. The evidence of deliberate manipulation accumulates, undeniable now. I feel the weight of understanding, the clarity of betrayal pressing against the edges of my restraint. Later, I retreat to my room, cataloging each fragment of evidence, each observed action. Receipts, messages, misaligned furniture, stolen moments of private conversation, all coalesce into a coherent pattern of control and deception. My sister is deliberate. Dad is passive, complicit, or both. And I am the silent observer, aware that the escalation cannot be undone, that the next move will be decisive. Night falls, but the tension does not dissipate. I lie awake, tracing the day in fragments, subtle manipulations, deliberate omissions, orchestrated lies, and the quiet complicity that fuels them. The stakes have risen sharply, the pattern of betrayal unmistakable. I feel the weight of restraint, the cost of patience, and the undeniable clarity of what has been done. My world has shifted, and I understand that the careful balance of observation and silence is no longer enough to protect the fragile equilibrium. And yet, I do not act. I wait, I record, I measure. The escalation is real, deliberate, and undeniable, but I maintain my restraint. The quiet dominance of those around me is now fully visible. I feel the pressure, the psychological cost, the first true sense of impending consequences. The house hums with tension, and I understand with unshakable certainty that nothing will ever be the same. The morning arrives heavy, thick with unspoken tension. I wake before the house stirs, as always, but the weight pressing on me feels different now. Heavier, more deliberate, a constant reminder that nothing here is as it should be. The previous days have revealed fragments, evidence, and subtle manipulations, but today the psychological pressure coils tighter around me, testing the limits of restraint I have so carefully maintained. I move through the kitchen quietly. My sister is already there, humming lightly, a sound I no longer find innocent. Her eyes flick toward mine briefly before darting away, as though challenging me to notice but daring me to confront. Dad enters soon after, his posture taut, controlled, as if the very air in the room belongs to someone else. I notice the micro-expressions, the twitch of his jaw, the subtle narrowing of his eyes, the almost imperceptible shift in tone when he speaks to her. My chest tightens. By mid-morning, I reach the first true emotional threshold. I discover another misplaced document, something that should have been archived securely. My sister had moved it deliberately. I feel the surge of anger rise, hot and bitter, but I suppress it immediately. I do not want confrontation. I do not want chaos. I have learned that silence is a form of power, and that restraint can outlast even the most carefully constructed deception. Lunch is another test. My sister orchestrates conversation with precision, inserting subtle lies and half-truths. Each word is a probe, measuring my patience. Dad participates minimally, allowing her narrative to dominate, occasionally correcting softly but without urgency. The tension is nearly unbearable. Every instinct screams for exposure, for confrontation, but I remain silent. Observation is my strategy. Endurance is my weapon. The moral cost of patience presses heavily on my conscience, a weight that I carry alone. Afternoon brings partial confirmation of my fears. An email I intercept, brief, accidental, yet damning, reveals coordination and intention. My sister is manipulating, orchestrating, and my father is either complicit or blind. I pause before acting, heart pounding, reminding myself that reaction now could destroy what little control remains. I record the evidence silently, cataloging each piece with meticulous care. Restraint is no longer merely a habit, it is a deliberate moral choice. By evening, the tension has escalated to near breaking. I walk through the house quietly, cataloging the signs of deception. A misaligned frame, a faint scent that isn't familiar, a subtle alteration in the routine that I had trusted. Each detail, though small, carries immense significance. I feel the psychological cost of every day spent watching, listening, and measuring. The betrayal is no longer subtle. It is undeniable, deliberate, and relentless. Dinner passes in silence and precision. My sister speaks with controlled confidence, Dad responds minimally, and I sit, collecting fragments in my mind. Each smile, each casual gesture, each unremarkable word carries the weight of deception. My restraint feels both like armor and a shackle. I cannot unsee what I have observed, yet I withhold judgment, confrontation, and accusation. The moral tension is suffocating. Later, in my room, I review the day. Notes, receipts, digital traces, and physical evidence form a network of betrayal so complete that my chest tightens at the realization. I understand the stakes fully now. Exposure is inevitable, but the moment for action has not arrived. Patience, endurance, and strategic observation have become the only paths forward. I feel the first true cost of betrayal, not only the deception itself, but the weight of watching and waiting, knowing that truth cannot be forced, only revealed. Night settles over the house, heavy and calm. I lie awake, tracing every interaction, every micro-expression, every subtle manipulation. The clarity of truth presses against my mind, yet I hold it silently, letting it accumulate without comment. I am no longer simply a witness. I am a guardian of truth, a silent arbiter who understands that restraint, though costly, is a measure of moral power. By the end of the night, I recognize the full cost. Betrayal is no longer abstract. It is visible, heavy, undeniable. I feel the weight of moral responsibility pressing down, a force that demands patience, endurance, and emotional fortitude. I cannot react yet. I cannot speak. I can only observe, catalog, and measure. And in the quiet of my room, I understand. This is the breaking point, the place where I reconcile what I see with what I cannot yet change. The psychological pressure is immense, but restraint remains my choice. I have endured deception, gaslighting, and dismissal. I have watched as trust was systematically undermined. I have cataloged the truth silently, with patience and care. And now, standing on the edge of revelation, I accept the cost, not of betrayal itself, but of the quiet, deliberate patience required to ensure that when the truth is revealed, it carries weight no one can dismiss. Morning comes, heavy and deliberate, as though the house itself is aware that the fragile balance has shifted. I move through the rooms quietly, noting subtle changes. Dad's cautious glances, my sister's slightly forced calm, the faint tension in the air that feels almost tangible. The small cracks I have cataloged for days are now wider, and the truth begins to assert itself, however quietly, into the rhythm of the house. I find evidence in unexpected places. A misplaced notebook, receipts left out, digital traces that cannot be hidden. Everything aligns into a coherent pattern. The truth is no longer fragmentary. The deception, once subtle and carefully layered, is visible in its totality. I do not shout, I do not confront. I catalog, I observe, and I wait. The quiet weight of recognition presses against me, heavy but precise. By mid-morning, subtle witnesses emerge. The housekeeper mentions packages she had delivered, noting small inconsistencies she had ignored at first. A neighbor calls to clarify a delivery schedule that contradicts my sister's story. Dad receives a message at his office, one that cannot be glossed over or misinterpreted. Each fragment, small alone, accumulates into undeniable confirmation. The web of deceit is exposed not through confrontation, but through the systems and records I have been quietly observing. Lunch is subdued. My sister's composure falters slightly as she senses the shift, though she maintains the performance of calm. Dad's voice carries a trace of tension, subtle but unmistakable. They are both aware that the quiet, slow unraveling has begun. I sit, restrained, cataloging every gesture, every micro-expression. I feel no triumph, no satisfaction. Only the calm certainty that truth is emerging, unstoppable and undeniable. By afternoon, the patterns crystallize. Emails, receipts, and notes all confirm what I had suspected. My sister's manipulation, Dad's passive complicity, the carefully orchestrated deception, it all converges into a quiet inevitability. I do not speak. I do not accuse. I observe, letting the systems themselves reveal the consequences. The power of truth lies not in confrontation but in inevitability, and I allow it to unfold. The first cracks in their control appear subtly. Dad hesitates when explaining an inconsistency, his eyes flicking toward me briefly before looking away. My sister's laughter becomes brittle, forced, and she drops a pen deliberately but with less confidence than before. The energy in the house has shifted. The quiet consequences of their actions are unfolding without my interference, without spectacle. Observation has become the tool that ensures the truth cannot be denied. Evening arrives with an almost imperceptible calm, though the tension remains. My sister's words falter, her careful manipulations less precise, less controlled. Dad's responses are measured, constrained by the undeniable record of truth. I sit quietly, cataloging each moment. The house feels smaller, heavier, charged with the quiet inevitability of exposure. The consequences are subtle, slow, and deliberate. No one confronts, no one shouts, but the balance of power has shifted irreversibly. Night falls. I retreat to my room, tracing the day in fragments, receipts, notes, emails, and observations. Each one confirms the pattern I had suspected for days. The deception, once carefully hidden, now collapses under its own weight. My sister can no longer maintain her control. Dad can no longer deny what has been meticulously documented and quietly observed. The consequences are real, precise, and unavoidable. In the silence, I feel the weight of restraint and observation. The truth has emerged without spectacle, without confrontation, without drama. The quiet fallout unfolds gently but irrevocably. Power has shifted, not through anger or confrontation, but through inevitability. The systems, records, and witnesses I have observed reveal what I have already known. I lie in bed, aware that the house has changed forever. The subtle, slow collapse of deception has occurred, and though there is no celebration, no victory, the consequences are undeniable. Truth, once carefully observed and catalogued, has found its way to the surface. My restraint, patience, and silent vigilance have ensured that the world can no longer deny the reality of their actions.